left the EuroPC in the last installment in this series, we knew that there was something wrong with the address bus. We saw that there was some strange shapes going on the address bus when we was measuring at the video chip and at the GIM chip. And we also knew that the address lines was kind of different on the outside of the latches than they was on the inside. And as we can see here in this schematics, the address latches is the U4, U5 and U6, and you have the data latch as U3, or data buffer really. And the data lines all seems to behave different. So the first thing we are going to do is just to desolder the LS373 chips and see if we can isolate the problem. If the addresses on the CPU is now behaving much better, we knew that it is the latches that is doing something to havoc the bus, because the latches should isolate the signals between the input and the output. The latches should also be easily testable in the mini programmer and in my Retro Chip Tester Pro if necessary. I tried to clean up the solder on the top of the board with some desoldering braids, and that does not work well. The solder is almost unmeltable, and that is of course because it is corroded, so that the properties of the solder is altered and it needs a much higher temperature to melt. And I tried to add some new fresh solder, but the new solder won't stick either. So this is something I just have to fix with adding flux and maybe trying to use the desoldering gun just from the underside and hot air, as we normally do it when we desolder things from our beloved Commodore 64 boards. I do adjust up the heat a bit on the desoldering gun, as the solder is corroded and needs a bit higher temperature to melt. But I'm careful not to adjusting it too much, so it's about 370 degrees or something. And the desoldering seems to take quite well, but there are some holes that has some solder left in them, and these I have to fill with fresh solder, and at least for now it seems like the new solder is mixing with the old one, and then it should be easier to desolder this. But the old solder on the back of the board is still there, so we do have to use the hot air gun in addition to melt this out afterwards. The hot air I'm using here is about 350 degrees something, and I do think it's enough. Yeah, you can see there it fell out quite easily, this one, and with no damage to the board it seems. And on these boards where we see a lot of corrosion, it's very important to clean the pads before we try to soldering anything new in here again. And it's very important that we clean on both sides and that we are able to put some flux hopefully into the holes as well, because we need to make sure that the solder is flowing through the board, because we are soldering from the bottom of the board, and we need to make sure that the solder is tracking through the hole and that it's making contact also on the top. Then we can have contact even if the vias in the holes is a bit on the corroded side. The next 4 ships was almost exactly the same. The ships that was closest to the clock was hardest to desolder, and the ships that was further away was quite easy to desolder. And I take these first 4 chips and I just lift them out, and I'm going to replace those with sockets, and I'm going to put new chips in every one of them. I don't have a 245F chip, so I'm going to use probably a 74 HCT 245. They should be faster than the F, and they also should be lower power drawing, but they also have a lower fan out, so we have to see how that goes. And I won't lie to you, this process, even though I've cut away most of it, it took some time. I have used more than 45 minutes or so to desolder these chips, and now it's just the cleanup left to clean up the pads. But it's a lot of hard work, and you have to be really careful, especially when you have to apply heat in several sessions, because the pads are getting looser and looser every time. But I managed to do this without lifting pads, and the key to that is that you have to be patient and you have to take your time and not try to pry the ship out. You have to have it falling out of the holes. I tack all the sockets into place with soldering 3 or 4 legs, and then I solder the rest of the legs all together in one session afterwards. That way I can get the highest quality, I think. And we must have done a really good job with the cleaning, because all the solder is now sticking and the soldering goes without a hitch. But still, with 4 sockets of 20 pins, there is 80 holes to solder, and it takes some time. And with that done, it's time to admire my work. I do think I have to test the chips before I go any further and stick any new chips into these sockets, because if the chips are not damaged, then I'm going to keep these sockets empty and I'm going to measure straight on the socket headers to see if I can get good signals on both sides of the gate. That was kind of the point with desoldering these in the first place, is to get some insulated measurements. But first we take the TL8662 Plus mini programmer and test the chips. We could of course use the Retro Chip Tester Pro, but if we get a definitive wrong on this one, then I don't bother to get that one. If we get right on these chips that I am really convinced are bad, then we are going to take out the Retro Chip Tester Pro. It's already a bad sign that the auto-find couldn't identify the chip, so we are browsing through the list to find the 74373 chip. And as suspected, it's failed, and it has a whole lot of errors in the truth table here. So let's take the next one and test that too, and see if it has a similar fault. And at the first glance, it doesn't seem like it only have a similar fault. It seems like it has the exact same fault, and that's peculiar. So let's test the third and final 373 chip on this board to see if it has the same fault. If it has, I will be very surprised. And as you can see, there is fewer faults on this chip, but it does look similar. I'm just going to test a new part 373 to check that the tester is okay and it tests OK on this chip. And as you can see, this looks all okay. And just how similar are the faults on the 373s? And we can see the two first, they are exactly the same faults. And when we look at the third chip, we can actually see that there is no fault on the third one that isn't already on the first two. So it seems that the last one is on its way to get as bad as the first ones. So maybe this is a fault on this batch of 373s. Who knows? But they're all bad, that's for sure. And now let's test the F245 that stood as the data latch, or the isolation from the data bus for the CPU. And as you can see, it's just as bad as the others. And we're going to benchmark or check this again against 74 LS245 to see if the truth table matches up what's in the mini programmer's reference. And as we can see, the 245, the 45 and the 645 has the same pinout and truth table, so it could be either of these devices, but we know that this is a 245. We are going to replace these chips with the new chips, and I'm going to do a quick test on these chips also before I put them in. And we are going to use regular 74 LS373s. And I'm going to try first with a 74 LS245 chip, as it was an F that stands there, and normally the F is a bit quicker, but sometimes it doesn't matter. So let's test with that one first to see if anything can lead back to this being too slow a chip. Yeah, so let's try a quick power on with these 4 chips new in the socket. And by the way, I tested all these chips off camera. They are fully working specimens of new old stock parts. The beeping is a very good and promising sign, but it seems to be stuck on no postcodes at all. But it's better than before. So next I will try 2 things. I will try to reprogram the BIOS onto another chip. It seems to be some instability in the startup sequence, and that can be the socket or the EEPROM for the BIOS. That socket I have not changed. And also there is one other thing, and that is that I've put in a 74 LS245 and not a HCT as I said I should, because I was thinking of testing that first. So I'm going to change these 2 things and we make a new test. When you use EEPROM programmer to read out EEPROM, it doesn't really matter the shows of the chips for the burning voltages and so on, because you're only going to read it, and then it's the data lines, the chip enable and the output enable and address lines that matter. And I'm going to choose the EEPROM that's the right size, and I'm also going to be careful with the voltages, so I choose the lower voltages in the range to be careful not to destroy anything. And as I said, this EEPROM appears to be somewhat unstable. This is a 32K EEPROM, aka a 27256 kind of chip. And I just try to choose read from the device menu, and I get this error message, check adapter and position, and that means that it doesn't find some of the values that he is expecting to find on this. And I know that the pinout on this should be right. And we just do a quick clean of the legs on the EEPROM, and we try again a new readout. And it didn't appear to be much gunk on the legs, but when we try again now, we see that it's actually able to read the chip. And if it's right, I don't know, but it didn't get measured about some levels on the legs or something that it couldn't understand. But this is really when disaster struck, because I changed this EEPROM with a empty one. It's a 27C256 from ST. And I have a bunch of these and they all work fine. And I programmed it like I normally do. I changed the programming voltage to 12.5 volt, and I changed the PGM voltage to 5.5 volt instead of 13 and 6.5 as its standard values for this chip. And that's what I always use, and it always works. And I programmed the chip. Everything seemed fine. I even took a verify on the chip, but when I placed the chip in the machine, it was blank. And when I tried to save the file that was in the mini programmer software, it went blank. So there was a fault in this file and it was blank. So here I actually lost the EEPROM. I have no working copy of this BIOS, and my copy was blank. And I started googling around after a BIOS file for this computer, and the closest I got with googling was this Russian page where they actually listed the Schneider Euro XT, that is the desktop version of this computer. And they had several files here, and all these files here was you had to have a login, and I don't bother to do that. But down here you actually have some downloadable files, and I was able to download this file and tried around a bit with them, but this was nothing happened at all. But with this file I actually got a beep, and then I'm not sure what happened, but it did get about as far as we did with the other ROM chip that was not working. But then I scroll down a bit more and come to this old FTP page, where they said that this page might be offline and stuff, but they had this link here down to the archive.org website, where I actually was able to download a copy of the whole web page or FTP site. FTP is cpcscene.de. In this file I actually found some of the BIOSes, I found more service manuals, and I found a lot of other stuff. And this was a terrible long download. It downloaded for about 30 hours. But in the end, I was able to both download it and unpack it. And this is quite the extensive library of stuff, but I'm only concerning myself now with this Schneider PC. And you have here the EuroPC XT, and you have here folder with BIOSes. And here you actually have all the BIOSes for this computer, it seems. This was the one that was included, and you also have a 2.7 08. Here it stands BIOS 2.8 or 2.8B. BIOS, okay, they have dropped the V2, but this is probably also for the EuroPC, because you have the EuroPC 2 that's written like this. And here they have another version, it's 301, and they have the character ROM, and they also have the Oro XT BIOS version 1.0. And this one, I actually had the machine beeping when I tried, but nothing else happened. I think this was the original version. I'm going to put this into an EEPROM, and I'm going to see if we can get some more life out of our EuroPC. And since this is only one character ROM, I don't know what language it actually is supposed to be, but there is one special character ROM for the Danish and Norwegian market, so this is probably not it. But so far I have no reason to believe that the character ROM is not working, but we might find that on other sites. Yeah, and this is almost a repeat of last time. We are going to load the file now from the download area where we unpacked the FTP area, and we are going to adjust the voltages, so it's 12.5 as VPP and VDD voltage 5.5, even though this EEPROM has range that's a bit higher. We don't trust that because we don't know if this is a genuine IC or not. So I always choose that, and it always works for me on this, so I don't see no reason to up the voltages on this. And when we're finished with the writing, we do take extra verify, even though it takes a verify when you write it. And we take this EEPROM and we put it into our beloved EuroPC to see what happens. Yeah, now let's turn it on and see what happens, see if we get more than one beep. And this looks real cool. We have no monitor attached, of course, so we can't see what's happening on the screen, if anything is happening on the screen, of course. But there is a lot of codes running through, and if someone has some information of what all these BIOS test codes mean, please give me a hands up on that. I do have all the generic overview of BIOS codes and postcodes, but they are usually of no help if you don't know exactly the BIOS manufacturer and what dialect they are using. Yeah, and it seems here like it's stuck on 96 or 9B or something, so I do think I will try another run with a monitor attached. Yeah, let's see what happens now with the monitor connected. Sorry for the handheld filming of the monitor, but it's the only way as of now, as I don't have a capture. Oh, what's happening here? Okay, it looks totally disturbed, but this is clearly a sign of something trying to happen on the monitor. It might look like RAM error, it might look like some more stuck data lines, but this certainly is a result. So now we have something to work on. Yes, finally making some progress on the EuroPC. It was a real pleasure to see something appear on the screen, even though it was kind of garbled. But now I have something visual to compare against, to see what it should be like, and that's a huge win for me. And sorry to say, but I can't continue this project now for a couple of weeks because I will be out traveling. But I hope you enjoyed the video so far, and I will continue this series with at least one more installment before Christmas. And hopefully we will be able to do something DOS related on this computer. We don't know the state of the floppy, we don't know the state of the keyboard, so maybe not. But at least I hope we are going to show something that's not totally garbled on the screen. It of course depends on if the CJ chip and the GIM chip actually are okay. But that's it for this episode. So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and please spread the words to others that might be interested in my content. And thanks for watching again. See you in the next one.